What's good, everybody? I'm Keandre, this is Hoop Intellect, and welcome back to the channel. Now, we just finished the Eastern Conference preview in last video, and now we'll head out west to what is a really competitive and tough race to get into the postseason. Let's go ahead and get into it. My number one seed in the Western Conference this year is the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers are coming off of a great championship run and somehow got better. They added one of the best centers of his era and one of the best passing bigs ever in Marc Gasol. Even though he's not the all-star player he once was, he's an upgrade from Dwight and JaVale in a lot of ways. They also added Dennis Schroeder and Montrezl Harrell, the two clear frontrunners for last year's Sixth Man of the Year award. All of this came at the perfect time as well. LeBron and AD will likely need to manage their minutes this season, and adding guys who can legitimately make plays for themselves and others is perfect. This is the Lakers Western Conference, and I'm confidently saying this team will be the number one seed and likely the best in the league behind the star power of LeBron and AD, chemistry, and role players who do their jobs among the best in the business. At number 2, we have the Los Angeles Clippers. The Clippers went out sad last season. There's no denying that. They lost Montrezl Harrell, but replaced him with Serge Ibaka. I think it's a solid swap, but I really did like what Trez brought to this team as a role man. However, if he caused chemistry issues, it's a great move in itself. I believe Paul George is going to return back closer to the player we saw him be in his last year in OKC. He's a tremendous talent, and I think he'll remind people of that this year, as the Clippers still have the talent to easily be one of the best teams in the West. If they want to win a championship, I still think they badly need a point guard, but they still have what it takes to win a ton of games this year just off the strength of having Kawhi Leonard and Paul George on their roster. Even though I do think Denver will miss both Jeremy Grant and Mason Plumlee, especially early on, the talent of guys like Michael Porter Jr. and Bol should be able to be effective. We know this group can be one of the best offenses in the league on a night-to-night basis, but I'm looking to see what happens defensively, because outside of a healthy Gary Harris, JaMychal Green, and Paul Millsap at times, I don't really trust anyone else on this roster. I say Jokic, Murray, head coach Mike Malone, and the rest of this talented group figure it out, and will likely be able to outscore people anyways, but it'll likely be a bigger issue in the playoffs. I really like this Blazers team. Health willing, I think they have what it takes to have one of the better records in the conference by season's end. It'll be super competitive, and the difference between seeds will likely be marginal, but Portland is going to be tough, starting with Damian Lillard. I believe he became a borderline superstar last season, and he was terrorizing defenses in a way that is rivaled by few players of his physical stature. Overall, this might be the most complete roster Portland has had since the Nick Batum, Wesley Matthews, LaMarcus Aldridge days. Guys like Robert Covington and Derrick Jones Jr. really helped complete this, and you still have the likes of Carmelo, Gary Trent Jr., and Anthony Simons coming in off the bench. And watch out for Harry Giles. The Dallas Mavericks should be even better this season. I think I'd be a bit more optimistic if Kristaps Porzingis was healthy, but that's always a question with him anyways. They traded for Josh Richardson, who complements Luka better than Seth Curry did, no disrespect to him. I like this roster a lot, and if Luka is Luka, this team is going to be dangerous. I think this might be the year Luka averages a triple-double. The 5 seed could be enough, but if the Mavs get to about the 3 seed, I think we might have us a new youngest MVP ever with Luka Doncic. Who knows what would have happened had the Utah Jazz had Bogdanovic in the bubble last year. I really like Donovan Mitchell's game and think he's on the brink of being great. I don't know if he'll be able to duplicate that bubble performance, but he's certainly going to keep improving. I really like their starting lineup of Conley and Mitchell in the backcourt, Ingles or O'Neal at the 3 spot, and then Bogdanovic and Gobert. I think that core gets you to the postseason with relative ease. And then players like Jordan Clarkson, Derek Favors, Georges Niang, and even Elijah Hughes look primed to contribute. The Jazz look like the 6th or 7th seed to me. For a player as exciting and successful as Steph Curry is, you would think he'd get more respect. We all watched, well, I watched, this man ascend in the early part of the decade and carry that Warriors team to the championship. I don't care that Andre Iguodala won Finals MVP. The 6'3" dude was the engine of that team that also won 73 games the next year, and there aren't many point guards who have led teams in the way Curry has. This group of players isn't the best, and they badly need another player or two who you can count on to make plays when Steph is out of the game, or even in the game just to be less predictable. But Steph is legitimately hungry again, and it's hard for me to doubt him. It's going to be tough in the West this year, but I have the Warriors returning to the playoffs. I have the Phoenix Suns finally getting back to the playoffs this year. We saw what Chris Paul did with that Thunder team last year. He just makes his teams better in numerous ways. They could get off to a slower start, but I think they'll pick up steam quick. Devin Booker is already a star, DeAndre Ayton has shown he's a really good player, and then you've got the young guys like Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson who have a great opportunity to take that next step. Mix in the solid veterans like Jay Crowder, Etuan Moore, and Dario Saric, and you have a team that I think has enough to finally get back into the postseason. As much as I would have liked to see this team together, I'm just not sure it happens. Unless all the rumors are fake, Harden clearly wants out, and a guy like him isn't going to do a great job of hiding that, whether it's on the court or in the media, or giving a rapper extravagant gifts in exchange for a 4PF chain. I think Harden is inarguably one of the best talents in the league, but this just doesn't seem like the environment conducive for success. If Harden was bought in, I think this team probably ends up being closer to like the 5th or the 6th seed. But when you're flying out to Vegas to party in the middle of the season, showing up late to things or letting that Eddie Lacy gene show, it's super tough for me to pick you. And the fit of Wall and Harden isn't the greatest, especially if Harden is still insistent on having the ball for 20 seconds of possession, which is why I ultimately think Houston will miss the playoffs. Led by All-Star Brandon Ingram and former number 1 pick Zion Williamson, this Pelicans team should have a shot to make it this year, even though they're still being held back by management that thought it was a good idea to put Steven Adams alongside Zion and extend his contract. Also, they traded for Eric Bledsoe, who further minimizes the spacing on the floor, especially since they're going to start him, and they drafted my guy Kyra Lewis Jr., who should have had immediate backup point guard minutes, but on this team it'll probably be buried. There's a lot of talent here, but in order to get over that hump, they're going to need to make some smarter moves to space the floor and put guys like Zion, Ingram, and Lonzo Ball in the best positions to succeed. As long as Greg Popovich is part of the San Antonio Spurs, I don't see this team being non-competitive. They still have a solid roster with DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge leading the way, alongside young players such as DeJounte Murray, Derek White, Lonnie Walker, Keldon Johnson, and Devin Vassell. I think this squad has a chance to be really interesting, especially if one of those young guards can actually realize some of their potential, but I don't think they're dynamic enough on both ends as a collective to make the playoffs this season. If Luke Walton wasn't the coach of this Kings team, I'd actually like them a bit more. I think De'Aaron Fox has a chance to be known as one of the best guards in the league, and I think he's become a bit underrated over these last couple years. A lineup with Fox, Hield, Barnes, Bagley, and Holmes or Bjelica is actually pretty solid. I think this Kings team would make a run at that 8th seed in the East, but in the West, it's far too tough for me to consider them. Ja Morant is a star. From the limited preseason minutes, you can already tell that he has further elevated his game and should be ready to possibly even make an all-star game this year. However, his team just isn't that good yet. They exceeded expectations last year, partly due to a soft first half schedule and some really hot shooting from Dillon Brooks. This year, especially with Jaren Jackson Jr. missing time, I think they take a sizable step back. Next season is the one I think they truly contend for the playoffs, so this year could be disappointing to some. I'm still not exactly sure what the vision is with this Timberwolves team. It really sucks that they had to give up that pick, though it is top 3 protected, to trade Wiggins for D'Lo. I like D'Lo and think he's better than some give him credit for, but that type of stuff can really hurt franchises. There's a lot going on with this roster, and probably too many young guys for them to make serious noise unless Towns and Russell elevate their games, most notably on defense, which would be a 2020-like surprise. I don't know, it could happen. I'm interested in seeing how Anthony Edwards, Jarrett Culver, Naz Reid, Jaden McDaniels, and even Jalen Noel perform this year, so it's not all negative over here. If this Thunder team stays together throughout the season, I actually think they might sneak up on some teams. I'm expecting Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to lead this team, but the combination of Lou Dort, Darius Bazley, and Al Horford is sneakily good. I definitely like this team more than the T-Wolves, but I think they end up trading a couple of their veterans like George Hill, Ariza, or possibly even Horford, and make a not so subtle run at that #1 pick as the trade deadline comes around. Sam Presti and company are currently headed in the right direction, and I think this will be a great year of development for their young players, more than anything. That's going to do it for this video. Be sure to let me know where you agree and disagree with my picks in the comments down below. I think the Lakers repeat as champions this year, and along the way win the West once again. Go ahead and like the video if you made it this far, and subscribe if you're new. I'm Keandre, this is Hoop Intellect, and I'm out.
And you know I get around.
How you got it, yeah.
Hey.